Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Social Housing Roundtable. My name's Matt Baird. It's great to see so many people with us on this Tuesday morning on a topic which, when we're 130 something episodes into the roundtable, is actually a brand new topic. We haven't done cybersecurity before, so it's great to see so many people with us, nice and early. I'm ready for what's going to be a really interesting and also quite insightful discussion. I'll let you know why some of those points in just a moment. But to those who've not met me or not been to the Social Housing Roundtable before, a massive, massive welcome. My name is Matt Baird. I have been running the Social Housing Roundtable now for nearly 3 years. The idea behind this was always to have a place where we could come together in the social housing space, be you a consultant, a tenant, someone who's a director of housing and been in the game for 20 years, or someone who is brand new to the sector and has only been in the sector for 2-3 weeks, to learn, to share ideas and share best practice. So no matter who you are or where your thoughts are, as long as you're respectful, your views are here, are welcome here. Feel free to disagree. Feel free to really share your thoughts and insight, because everyone is welcome and your thoughts are too. Day to day, I am a recruiter. I've been recruiting in social housing for over 11 years. I set up on my own just over 3 years ago. And the reason this stays free is because a number of people who've been to the roundtable, attended events, have used me for their recruitment. So if you are looking for support and are looking to recruit in a very moral way, please do reach out. It'd be great to be working with you. I'm also the co-chair of the board for Spring Housing in Birmingham, and these sessions are sponsored by Alerta Call throughout 2024. So on to today, I'm very pleased to welcome Zoe Benjamin, who's going to introduce herself and the business of DAINTTA and everything else very, very shortly. What I will say is I've given her authorization to do a deep dive on what she could find out about me within half an hour as part of this, as part of the cybersecurity thing. So you may learn things about me that I don't know. I don't know what we'll find. It's going to be interesting. I'm a little bit nervous about it, but I'm sure it'll be absolutely great. So I've given Zoe the chance to just to kind of really showcase actually what you can find out by someone like myself in half an hour just through online presence and other things. And also kind of go, well, actually, if that's just what you can find in half an hour, what more can you find if you have more time? So she's assured me there's nothing too horrendous. So we'll wait and see. But for now, Zoe, I'm going to pass it over to yourself. A big, big welcome today. To those who are new, Zoe's going to do about 20 minutes, half an hour of intro discussion of thoughts on what we're talking about today. And then there will be a good 20 minutes, half an hour of open questions, forum discussion. So if you've got ideas in the meantime, please share them in the chat and afterwards we'll be asking you to join us. So Zoe, over to you.
Thanks so much, Matt. And there's a few people in the chat wanting me to dish the dirt, but unfortunately, Matt hasn't done anything so spectacularly dodgy that there's much dirt. But hopefully there'll be some interesting things to share nonetheless. Right, let me share my screen. This is the bit that always goes wrong. Okay, can you see my slides?
Perfect.
Brilliant. All right. So yeah, I mean, Matt's done an intro for me. I just want to say it's a pleasure to be speaking to you today, and thanks for having me in this brilliant forum. I've managed to catch a few of these, so I've been to one of the sessions, but looked at a lot of the recordings. And actually, this session ties in quite nicely to some of the other ones you've done around kind of the digitalization of social housing and also the stuff around kind of data protection. So I don't want to talk too much about myself today, because frankly, there's just a lot of other stuff I'd like to get into. But as you may have guessed from the title of today's session, I work in cybersecurity. So I work for a brilliant company called DAINTTA. And if you want to find out more about what I do or about what DAINTTA does, then feel free to head to any of these, so my LinkedIn or the DAINTTA website, or you can also drop me an email if you just want to have a chat about some of this stuff, if anything's piqued your interest. Okay, there are a couple of things that I would like you to know about me, though. And the first one is that I am fascinated by people. So I love to observe people. I love to understand what makes us behave in the way that we do. And I guess that's why I'm in the area of cybersecurity that I'm in. And that is human cybersecurity. And so what I mean by that is looking specifically at how our people can protect us in cybersecurity. So less about the kind of technical controls, so firewalls, intrusion detection systems, not that stuff, but instead the human firewall. And hopefully I'm going to share some things that will help you understand how, we can protect our organizations, even our families and friends, and also ourselves from the kind of increased risk of cyber threats. The second thing I want to say about me is that social housing is not a sector I know very well, but it is an industry that I recognize to be very important. And in particular, I know that the data you hold is very valuable. And, as I said before, you had somebody come and talk about exactly that, exactly the data and the importance of protecting that. So as much as I want you to learn some stuff about me, I also am really keen to understand from you what the specific kind of issues you're coming up against are when it comes to cybersecurity. Okay, so things I'm going to cover. First of all, I want to highlight why cybersecurity is relevant to all of you on the call today. Then I want to look at some of the ways that cyber criminals are actually targeting us as humans. And then finally, my intention isn't just to kind of scare you and leave. I'm going to be talking about some of the ways that we can be more resistant to cyber attacks as individuals, but also as organizations. So why is cybersecurity relevant to all of you here today? Put simply, it's because it has the potential to impact all of us. So whether that's you personally or the organizations you work for, or the customers and tenants of social housing. So the fact that we are all meeting right now on Zoom is testament to a fact that we live much of our lives in a digital way. And I know that social housing in particular has been moving towards more kind of digital platforms. So providers are using online platforms for tenant interactions, but also for the kind of internal day-to-day operations. And I just want to be very clear that this is a good thing. Digitalization is to be encouraged. It makes us more efficient, it makes us more connected, but it also does come with risks. So cyber threats against housing organizations have increased by 65% in recent years. And part of the reason for that is because it holds so much valuable data. You all have access to really valuable data. So whether that's things like personal information, like addresses, or financial details, bank details, things like that. So that makes it particularly attractive as a target for cyber criminals. And there are lots of impacts that these cyber attacks have on housing organizations. And I don't think that I need to kind of touch on one of these in detail specifically, but the point I want to make is that there are lots of impacts beyond the ones we typically think of. So things like, financial loss and data loss is normally what comes to mind. But we also know that social housing organizations who have experienced cyber attacks, their customers and tenants, they actually report having received significantly higher number of phishing attempts as a result of that. So it has a direct impact on customers and tenants as well. And you'll notice that I'm using that terminology because I watched one of your recent talks, and I know that there's a question around what the correct vocabulary is there. So I will use both. So we have seen a lot of cyber attacks in the social housing sector and the housing sector in general in recent years. And I'm sure you'll be aware of many of these. So a big one a couple of years ago was Clarion, and that attack actually ended up costing them £17 million. And then there was Bromford, again, 2 years ago, and that attack caused them to actually shut down all of their systems and massively disrupted their operations. And then there was Red Kite. So Red Kite Community Housing, they were actually conned out of almost £1 million. And this is a really important one that I like to talk about because they were really transparent with what happened with them. And there's actually an open letter on their website, which you can go and read. And I urge you all to do so. But they kind of explained what happened and why it happened. And the point of this slide or bringing this up is not to shame anyone. The reality is that cyber attacks happen, and they happen to lots of organizations of all types and sizes. But that is exactly the point I'm trying to make. We can be learning from these attacks because they identify weaknesses that might be present in our own organizations or even indeed our own lives. So Red Kite in particular that I mentioned, they talk about some of the lessons they learned, and actually they managed to trace the attack back to a human error. So a fault in kind of the processes and the humans, sorry, not a fault in the humans, but it was ultimately a human error that led to the attack. 74% of data breaches are a result of human error. And cyber criminals target humans because it's much easier than trying to hack technology. And this fact gets quoted a lot, and it's normally followed by the phrase, humans are the weakest link. But humans are not the weakest link. They are our strongest defense, or at least they have the potential to be. So the way cyber criminals typically get into our organization systems is by tricking our people. So socially engineering them to get them to do something that they want. So that might be click a link in a phishing email, and that might cause the systems to kind of become infected with malware. Or it might be phoning us up, pretending to be the IT help desk to convince us to hand over login credentials or something like that. That's a particularly pertinent one at the moment because I'm sure many of you will have heard about the CrowdStrike situation that happened. And off the back of that, we had lots of cyber criminals pretending to be the organization's IT help desk saying, yep, I'll help you get back online, need your credentials, or I need to like remote access in. So yeah, caused lots of issues there. Okay. So another point to mention as well is so not only are these attacks on humans becoming more prevalent, they're also becoming more sophisticated. So with the kind of the boom of AI and all these tools that are coming out, people are able to generate deep fakes of people's kind of videos, pictures, or voices, and they're able to use AI to get a lot of data on people very quickly. And the reason that's important will become clear in the next bit that I'm going to talk about. So
you've got me nervous here, Zoe.
Take a deep breath, Matt. One of the best ways that we can defend ourselves is to actually get in the mind of the attacker and to understand their methods. So we all know what phishing is, I assume, and there's lots of different types of phishing, but the one I want to focus on today specifically is spear phishing. So as opposed to the kind of mass phishing we see, which most of you have probably got loads of emails clogging up your inbox right now, mass phishing is generic and goes out to lots of people, whereas spear phishing is highly targeted to an individual. And typically, these are individuals who have a lot of power, a lot of authority. Maybe they have access to a lot of money or information that would be useful. So things like bank details, for example. Maybe they're the people that authorize the financial transactions. So, CFOs, that kind of thing. And in these types of attacks, cyber criminals will gather as much intelligence as possible on a person, so often using just publicly available information like social media accounts. And they will use this information to create a social engineering attempt that they think the person will fall for. Now, fortunately for all of us, we have a very good sport in our midst. So Mr. Matthew Baird has very kindly agreed to let me socially engineer him for all of you today. And when I do this exercise, and I have done it for people before, I normally set myself 2 rules. So the first one is I give myself no longer than 30 minutes to find what I can about them on the internet. And the second rule is that I only use information that I can find publicly. So I don't start asking Matt personal questions about himself or anything like that. So Matt, you can attest to the fact that I haven't...
No, there's been no Q&A in advance or anything like that.
Brilliant. And I have to say, me and Matt have spoken before, but I didn't know Matt super well before this, but I certainly feel like I know him quite well now. All right. So what did I find out about Matt in 30 minutes? First of all, I found out some of the places he's been, spanning back the last 5 years, in fact. So that's everything from Twickenham Stadium back in 2019 to an escape room in York towards the end of last year, and more recently, a food hall in Amsterdam. I learned about his interests and his hobbies. So it turns out Matt loves sport, and pretty much all sport, as far as I can tell. He likes rugby, he likes cricket, he likes football, he even likes basketball. And I think his tastes in general are quite eclectic. So I learned that he likes music. And in fact, he's actually something of a musician himself. So I don't know if anybody knows this, but Matt did used to play bass in a band.
Badly.
And I think that band might have been called, can I name the band, Matt?
Yeah, feel free.
I think it was called Dictionary Deficit.
It was. God, we broke up when I was 19.
Well, there you go. I managed to go quite far back.
Yeah, well played.
And he's also just got quite an eclectic taste in music in general. So I found everything from Frank Turner to ska to more heavy stuff, so metal. I wanted to check with you, Matt, but am I right in thinking that you went to see Static X and Soil play Rock City on the 27th of September 2019?
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, bloody hell. Okay.
Cool. All right. So the other thing I learned about Matt is his motivations, who he is as a person. I learned a little bit about his psyche. So I learned that he's someone who's very sociable. He's always kind of going out and doing fun things with friends and family. But I think the biggest thing that I learned about Matt during my time stalking him on the internet is that he's someone who wants to help other people. And actually, he's particularly passionate about speaking out and being a voice for marginalized groups, which perhaps won't be unsurprising to those of you who know him and the kind of work he gets involved in. So why is this important? Why do I care about this? Well, if I want to trick Matt into doing something, I need to know what buttons to press and what heartstrings to pull at. So how could I, as an attacker, use this information to target Matt? Lots of ways. All I need to do is get Matt to click a dodgy link and make it look as kind of unassuming and undodgy as possible. So from his professional platforms alone, I've been able to see the events that he's been to recently. And actually, if I look at some of the comments on those, I can see people that he's met at those events. So there were some comments saying, hi, Matt, it was lovely to meet you at this event. Now, I could easily go on the profile of one of those people and find out where they work, what company they work for. And then I could create a spoof email from them. And how I would do this is, obviously, I couldn't use their original email domain. I would have to use one similar. So if I use the example of my email, so zoe.benjamin@daintta.com, I obviously can't send an email from zoe.benjamin@daintta.com if I'm not me, because that I don't have access to my email and that domain is owned by DAINTTA. But I could purchase maybe the domain daintta.co.uk. And therefore, when he receives the email, he would check the address and likely flags wouldn't raise. So I think what I would do is I would do that. And then I would send him an email saying, hi, Matt, it was great to meet you at X event. I would, pretend to be the person. I'm actually looking for new work opportunities in the sector, and I was wondering if you knew of anything suitable. Here is a link to my CV, and that's where I would put the malicious link that, had he clicked it, it would download malware onto his PC. So we know that Matt works, in the recruitment space, and we also know that he likes to help people. So that is one example of how I could use that information to target him. So I could have shown you that example, but because Matt was very kind and let me go a bit more personal, I wanted to show you something else that I came up with. Turns out Matt bloody loves escape rooms.
I do.
So let's say, for example, I was able to get the name of one of his close friends or family, which I was able to, by the way. I haven't included it here, obviously, because I want to protect everyone's identity. But I also know it was Matt's birthday recently. And what I might have done is send him an email pretending this is a gift card. So I went online, escape room gift cards, and this company came up.
I've been there.
Have you?
They're really good.
Great guess. So I looked on their website, I got some of their branding, and this is what I created in 10 minutes. So I'm using the color scheme from their website. I'm using actual graphics from their website. So if Matt did happen to check the website, or if he knew it, he would know that, it looks similar. What I could also do is I could also find, so say I'm pretending to be Matt's friend or family member, I can look at their posts on Facebook and I can look at the way they talk and the way they type and include some of that in there. So what I would have done is, dear Matt, so-and-so has gifted you an experience voucher, put their actual name in there, and then a light-hearted message. Happy birthday, Matt. Sorry it's late. Hope this isn't one you've already done. So showing that I know he's into escape rooms, he's probably done a bunch before. Now, what I would have done as well is I would have purchased a domain. So remember I talked about before being able to purchase a similar domain. So a legitimate email from Escape Hunt would have come addressed from something like giftvouchers@escapehunt.com. Now, I can't send an email from escapehunt.com, but I can send one from escapehunt.co.uk. And if you look, then that's selling for 1p on GoDaddy. So what a bargain that would have been. So this took me, let's say, 45 minutes total from finding the information to crafting this. And that was all done manually. Many cyber criminals have access to the tools that would allow them to do this much quicker than I did. So in the same time it might take you to make a cup of tea, they could use these tools to get the information on you, find the information from the internet on you, and then they could use another tool to actually create that fake email. And I want to be really clear about something. The point of this exercise is not to shame Matt for having that data out there. It's the nature of the world we live in. I dread to think what people could find if they were able to go on my social media. But the point of this exercise is to make you aware of how people might use that data to target you and to make you more vigilant in spotting these kinds of social engineering attempts. So even if it's just the couple extra minutes you take to actually verify that the email address isn't spoofed and matches the actual domain of the website. Oh, there we go. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a awareness of the risks and how you might be targeted. But I want to finish by telling you how we can make our organizations and communities more cyber secure by actually embedding cybersecurity into the culture. And this is what I do on a kind of day-to-day basis. This is what I work with clients to do. And typically, when we've tried to make our people more cyber secure, we've focused on just giving them the information, giving them awareness. So, here, phishing is bad. Don't click the link, whatever. And I'm sure you've all sat through the kind of annual cybersecurity awareness training that comes through, and it's great and it's important, but we all know what happens. We race to get through it so we can get a tick at the end. And it doesn't teach us to care. It doesn't make us care. So the data actually tells us that just telling people, just giving people the awareness is not enough. And we need to actually be looking at the behaviors and the culture when it comes to cybersecurity. And this is where we can learn from behavioral science. And when we're trying to embed a cybersecure culture, cybersecure behaviors into an organization, whether that's not clicking on the phishing link or encouraging people to use strong passwords, we need to look at how we can encourage those behaviors in a holistic way. So this is the COM-B model. It's a behavioral science framework. It's not something that I created. What it does is it allows us to design effective methods to actually change some of those behaviors. So very briefly, I will give you an example of how we might do this. So let's say the behavior we want to promote is we want people to report cybersecurity incidents when they happen. Okay? First of all, we want to look at the capability. So are people physically and psychologically able to perform that action? What I mean by this is physically, does a process exist to report cyber incidents? And psychologically, do they know the process exists? Do they know how to do it? Do they know how to follow it? The next thing we'd look at is the opportunity, so environmental or social. Do they have the opportunity in their day-to-day lives, jobs, to perform this action? Is it that they are so busy and the process is so long and convoluted that they don't actually have the time or ability to do it? And if so, can we look to simplify the process or, even change the environment? And then there's a social opportunity. Is it socially acceptable for people to be seen reporting incidents, or is there stigma attached to it? And if there is, can we find a way to make that process discreet or even anonymous? And then the final thing is motivation. And we have automatic or reflective. So automatic motivation means something is a habit. You automatically are motivated to do it because it's a habit. However, with a lot of things, particularly a lot of cybersecurity behaviors, it's not automatic. It's something you have to think about. So when we're thinking about it, what is the positive or negative consequence of doing something? And can we make people understand that and feel motivated by that? So you'll notice today, I didn't just show you some slides saying, here is why phishing is bad. I took you through the process. I made it personal to you. I made you think about yourselves and how your data might be at risk. And that's exactly what we want to be doing, with our organizations, with our communities. So this was just one example of how we can make our security controls more people focused and try and actually change behaviors and influence the culture. And of course, if you want to hear more about any of this stuff or more detail on this specifically, then you can always reach out to me. And yeah, I could talk about anything more in depth, or feel free to throw some questions at me.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Yeah, thanks for not embarrassing me too much, I think would probably be the the phrase I would go with there. I think it's really, really interesting to look at everything that you've highlighted. Like you said, there was nothing there that was too personal, and yet I'd have probably clicked that link. Like, that's not going away from it. Especially if you had family name and stuff like that on it,
yeah,
there's a good chance I would have done. Now, I'd like to think I wouldn't, but you never know. And actually, I think what was interesting is before we came on, actually, you've mentioned that was just in half an hour, but you've had it before where through dark web and other things, you found out people's passwords and other things without too much trouble because they're being sold. So these things are very, very doable, and it's we hold so much data as a social housing sector, it's kind of scary. And so there was a point made in the chat, and then I'll come to Steve. So David said, excellent point, Zoe, about the capacity of staff to ensure and check their online safety at work, as well as double checking. Often we get that innate gut feeling or sixth sense of something that makes us inquire further and investigate, but at times when so busy and focused on work, that thought sits in the back of your brain, can be so easily ignored. And I'm guessing this is something that you notice when working with clients both in and out sector, is it's the speed with which you're expected to work. That time to check is very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because we actually use a lot of learning from safety culture. So organizations where your physical life is at risk because, say, you're operating heavy machinery. And there are loads of lessons we can take from that, but also it's distinctly different because cybersecurity is abstract. You often can't see the thing. So if we can, it's about building in the space in our processes, in our thought patterns, to actually pause and think about, oh, how does this feel? Could this be a phishing attempt or whatever social engineering attempt? And is there someone I can check with? Is there a way I can validate that?
And I think this is the constant balance. But Steve, I'm going to bring you in first. Great to have you with us today. This episode of the Social Housing Roundtable is sponsored by Alertical. Alertical helps as many people as possible feel safe, connected and informed by combining ingenious technology and award-winning human contact. Alertical's digital engagement solution helps social landlords proactively know their customers and properties by putting a portable touchscreen in every home, offering a daily property check through the optional OK Each Day service, plus repairs reporting, tenant surveys, and much more. They also provide Beyond Warden Calls, an easier, simpler, and lower cost wireless warden call solution with video door entry, dispersed telecare, and smoke alarms. Alert Call works with over 60 housing providers across the UK to enhance two-way engagement between customers and landlords. In 2022, Alert Call won the Queen's Award for Enterprise and Innovation, and in 2023 won Housing Supplier of the Year. I'm delighted to have them as our sponsor of the Social Housing Roundtable throughout 2024.
My concern, I'm a tenant, resident, customer, take your pick.
Yeah.
My concern is, how do you placate the tenants to having things like sensors installed, which transmits personal living details, etc., to the landlord, and other ways where, I get a lot of, I'm sending between 1 and 10 emails a day to fraud, because these, the scum, they troll the internet and they send out these phishing emails to millions of people, come supposedly from a particular organization, in the hope that they are going to target, within those millions, there is going to be a number of people that actually have a connection to that organization. Now, landlords, somebody could send a phishing email to millions of people in this country, supposedly from my landlord. And as well as I do, that these fishers, scumbags, they are targeting the less well-educated. And they are the people that are going to be prey to those. That could be a backdoor into the landlord's database. So how can... I realise that today you're talking mainly to members of landlord organisations, but they've still got to take into account, by going digital, mainly digital for their tenants, they are going to be at a higher risk from those tenants actually clicking a false link to actually get into their databases.
So you've raised two really important points there that I want to address. The first one, I wouldn't say that my talk today is aimed specifically at kind of landlords or organizations. I think my main mission is about making cybersecurity accessible, because, as I said, it does affect everyone in our personal lives as well as professional lives. And there's been I don't want to say gatekeeping, but people haven't felt empowered. They haven't got that knowledge. They're not always empowered to protect themselves. They're not always aware of the threats. Sure, if you're working in cybersecurity companies or big tech companies, or even just big organizations in general, you're aware of those threats. But sometimes, we fail to bring that information into the community in general. And I think that is a really good place to start, to empower tenants to know how to protect themselves. The second point you raised was around, so you'll have to excuse me, I'm not aware of the specific technology you were talking about that kind of takes data and transmits it. But I will say that whatever technology is being used, the supplier of that technology, if they are collecting data on you, will have a requirement to protect that data. So if at any point you feel like that data is at risk, maybe you're getting an increase in phishing attempts, whatever it is that makes you feel that way, speak to your landlords, speak to the organizations, because if they can be aware of that, then again, they can help with the messaging, saying, okay, it might make them look into, has the data been compromised? And then it might make them put out some really important messaging to tenants to say, we know this is an issue. We will never contact you via these means. this is how we will contact you. This is our information. Don't click on anything that doesn't come via that route.
I appreciate that, but a lot of tenants have got busy lives, and if they see an email that purportedly comes from their landlord, and they click a link, that may not do anything. You know, they may not get a response. So, you know, they couldn't care less. Sorry, I'm
no.
It's blanket over everybody, but some people, you know, couldn't care. You know, oh, it didn't do anything. It's a mistake, or oh, don't worry, they'll get in touch again later, or whatever. And there's a lot of with this. There's going to be a lot of tenants are going to feel as if there's a lot of responsibility being put on their shoulders. I understand what you're saying, but
I think it's a responsibility on everyone's, isn't it? And there is the balance, Steve, and it's a real. But then again, this is exactly why we need these kind of sessions, but also where probably more training needs to be rolled out more thoroughly, so that everyone is aware of exactly what can happen. But I don't disagree with a lot of your points. And actually, I know Claire's got her hand up next. She does obviously a lot of work in that data space. So Claire, it'd be great to hear from you on some of the points that both Steve has raised and also Zoe.
Thanks, Matt. Zoe, absolutely loved that. Right from your introduction, I'm very much human-centered as well, and I talk about data from the legislation side rather than the cybersecurity.
Yes,
so, it's brilliant to meet you.
You
Thank you so much for that. I just want to pick up on what Steve was talking about the worry when there's technology involved. It is the landlord that remains responsible for that if they are using suppliers of systems, and there is not enough awareness around that in terms of the landlords knowing about their responsibilities, and that's something that I'm on a mission to try and get over. But I just wanted to pick up on the point about the human error as well, because that's something I've come back to a lot when there's been a data breach or a phishing attack and it's been successful. That is not the answer. How did this happen? The answer is not human error. That's the first answer. And I think you'd agree.
Yes.
It's, well, why? What situation led that person to make that error? And what can we do about it? Not just pointing the finger and blaming. I hate that.
Super important.
Like you were talking about the environment, the opportunity. What can we do to ensure that people aren't being rushed and they're not being pressured and they're not, that they know what their chief exec talks like, that they know their chief financial officer wouldn't send them an email saying, send me your login details. All those kind of things are so important as well. So I just need to.
I love that point. Thank you so much for raising that, because you're absolutely right. We shouldn't be asking, we should be asking why have they done that? It's not about finger pointing. And actually there's a whole question around the kind of language we use in the kind of, we call it human risk, human error. And there's a whole question of, should it be called human error? But right now, I don't know a better term. So if you think of one, or if anybody has any thoughts, then let me know. It's a good question for sure. But yeah, thank you for raising that.
Thank you, Claire. Michelle, good to have you with us today.
Good point. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, great presentation, Zoe. And for me, it's everything's about culture. Talk about that blaming, pointing the finger. So I like that capability, opportunity, motivation, linking it to the behaviour. I've worked in both small and very large HAs, and I've had to do that training. But it is based on what's the process. Now that's all fair and well for a lot of the larger housing associations. They have large IT departments with different various specialisms. But what about the smaller organisations? What could their first steps be? Because they're very challenged, not only resource-wise, but the majority of the time financially as well. So they wouldn't be able to afford some of the software that potentially larger HAs have. So what would you suggest?
Really good question. So I would say for smaller organizations who perhaps don't have the same, budget to spend on this stuff, focus on low cost, high impact things. So, you know, that might be the human stuff we've spoken about today, educating people, building it into the culture. I'm not saying it's a simple solution, but it's one of the lower cost ones. Things like regularly updating software. But then another thing I'd say is, so understand the risks specific to your organization, understand what data you hold and who might be trying to get hold of that and how, and then be prepared for if something does happen, because I don't want to say it's inevitable, but it's almost inevitable that a cyber attack will happen. So if it does happen to you today, do you know what the first 3-5 steps would be? So being able to kind of to say, okay, in this event, here are the first 3 steps we take. You know, who would you call? Do you have your data backed up? All these things can limit the impact that would cause you to cost more, cause you to spend more money. And then the final thing I would say is work with each other. You know, you have the benefit of being part of a brilliant community like this one. Speak to other organizations and find out what they're doing. Is there opportunity to share resources? Is there opportunity to share best practices? The more you can work together, I think the more benefit you're going to get.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely couldn't agree more. Jim, you are next. Don't worry, I'm bringing you in now.
So, hi Zoe, good morning.
Hi, Jim.
I've done quite a few of these webinars over the last few years, since COVID, particularly with Callum Chomsky from Chartered Institute in Scotland. Done a lot with the phishing and that. One of the things that particularly came out was how staff who were employed by various organisations, when they realised they made a mistake, they're frightened to say anything in case you get in trouble. And the idea is being more open with the data seems to be with the phishing, that people know if you do something, let us know, we can put it right, we can close down systems.
Yeah.
Now, St Helens Council, my own council, they got hacked and it costed an absolute fortune to close everything down and reset it.
Yeah.
One of the points I personally made was that it was okay when you get staff leaving housing associations and housing organisations to take the equipment and clean it down. But what happens when you are paying for digital inclusion for your own tenants and they only stay a wee while and they have all this particular information from the organisation on the PC or laptop or whatever they're being given to, you know, be inclusive with, and they leave and nothing happens, and that's open into the arena then to be hacked.
So are you saying that the laptops and things kind of remain with them? Is that?
No, like my housing association, they gave us our laptops and said, they're yours now. But many people have got those laptops. Now, if they're members of staff and they leave, they'll be asked to bring them in and they'll be cleaned by the comms departments and everything. You know, the techies will make sure they're cleaned down and fit for purpose again. But when they've given the equipment to tenants themselves, and then they decide, oh, I'm not doing it anymore and leave, they've still got all that information on the computers.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I
So
mean,
they're not looking at the tenants when they're leaving, cleaning the laptops, PCs, or whatever digital equipment they've given them.
so you're saying,
So that's out there.
So you're saying the data is held on their kind of personal devices as opposed to?
Yeah, the staff leave, they check it all out, it's cleaned down. When the tenants go, nobody comes back and says, oh, by the way, before you leave, can we have this PC you've been working on? You've been on this committee, that committee. Can we have it so we can clean all that information off? No, it's just given to them. So that is out there. That's another form of accessibility for phishing and spearing.
I mean, it's a really good question, and it's not something I've thought of. I know that there are.
They haven't either.
There's capability to remote wipe devices, but of course, if you don't own those devices, you won't be able to do that. I guess it would be, and again, you know, some of this will be going into an area of cybersecurity that's not my expertise, but it's important to understand access controls, what data, to keep a log of what data people have access to and how they access it. So if you can use platforms that require them to have an account, so maybe SharePoint, for example, and you can put data on there, you can quite easily manage the kind of removing access from the data, and you can put settings on, which mean that they can't download things. Of course, they can still take pictures and stuff. You can't stop that necessarily, but there are certainly ways you can limit how much access people have to data.
Yeah. See, for instance, my housing association give me a laptop. I have this laptop from them, the PC. Now, this is a separate system to the one I have for being on the Landlord Operations Committee. That's a tablet, and that's got company security only, so you can't use it for anything else other than the meetings that we have on that.
Right, yeah.
The information. But they are a very big housing association, the biggest in the Northwest, Taurus Social Housing, and are very on the ball when it comes to these things.
Yeah, there's definitely controls you can put in place. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's an interesting question.
Anyway, that's it.
Thank you, Jim. Much appreciated. So, a couple of points that come through on the chat. One of which most of us will be. This is from Keith Bowman. Most of us will be using one of the various housing management packages. We often link these electronically to allocations packages, plus finance, plus performance dashboards, etc. Do you feel we're increasing our risk by having connected information management systems based on obviously your insight?
So again, I'm cautious about trying to be a voice of authority on things that I don't know a lot about, and I'm less on the technical side. I will say it is a risk. So from what I understand, social housing organizations, social housing as a sector relies on, there's lots of component parts, so lots of different systems, lots of third parties. And I guess what I would say is make sure that, well, again, I'm not sure ultimately who the responsibility lies with, but they need to make sure that they're doing their due diligence with the technology they're using, the suppliers they're using, and also making sure that when you're bringing in new technology, you're being strategic about it. So you're not just kind of bringing things in because you think they might be useful. You're looking at what are the potential risks, and so in cybersecurity we call it secure by design. So whenever you're designing a new process that involves technology or bringing in new technology, you want to make sure that somebody who knows cybersecurity has looked at it from the start and made sure that it's being implemented in a way that is secure.
I think too often the problem is that doesn't happen. And I think I probably speak quite broadly, but I know one of the biggest issues we have in the sector, and I think some people will agree, is that we have so many systems talking to each other. They don't always talk to each other brilliantly. And I've had someone come onto the roundtable before as well to talk about a system they were trying to implement. And actually what we found, unfortunately, was that they didn't know which systems theirs tied in with. So actually some of the roundtable became a conversation around, well, how does your system talk to other systems, and what are we going to do to fix that? Because it's a big problem. And when you're looking at cybersecurity, I imagine it's an even bigger problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And
there's another question that had come through anonymously.
Yeah, go for
it. So one of the worst things that they find is that it's internal cyberbullying where data is compromised, where allegedly certain individuals appear to have access rights, take over one's keyboard in an attempt to obstruct the outcome of processes, messing with one's keyboard, sending out corrupted emails to cause financial loss and reputation. Is this something you've heard of before?
So I'm not 100% sure I understand the question. You're talking, well, I guess whoever it is can't answer it, but I'm going to answer it as if you're talking about kind of insider threats. So
I guess it's cybersecurity, but from an internal perspective. So when people are trying to, I guess, manipulate and send out corrupted emails to bring down a business internally, and what we can do internally to try and prevent, I guess, internal phishing and security.
Yeah, so there are programs that organizations have. I don't know how many kind of social housing organizations would have these, but lots of organizations have insider threat programs where they will first, I mean, it involves all kinds of things. It's from how you employ people and how much of their background you look into. It's about the kind of controls you have in place. It's about how you monitor people's behavior online. So one example is there's a system, it's a behavioral analytics platform, and it will create a picture of everyone in the organization, or everyone that uses your systems, and it will create a baseline of what normal behavior looks like for them. Typical working hours, the kind of amount of data they access, how often they send things to like other email addresses, download stuff, and anything that looks kind of suspect is out of that range will get flagged and will be looked into in more detail. I guess it would be in the instance that person specifically mentioned,
Yeah, as I mentioned, kind of more on that internal sabotage, you know, someone intentionally going out. But there's also, I think, again, it's conversations like this. I'd be amazed to know how often these are happening in the social housing world, because I think too often, and I don't know about yourself with obviously the work you do day to day, Zoe, but do you feel that we're still a little bit too blasé, I guess, around cybersecurity, particularly around the human-centric stuff? Are we still just very, I guess, as a society, to go, oh well, I know it's happening to someone else, but it won't happen to me? Is there still too much of that, do you feel?
Yeah, I think there is too much of that on a personal level, and I think there's too much of that on a organization-wide level. So the statistic I shared earlier, 74% of cyber incidents are linked to some kind of human error. And by the way, that was the most conservative of the statistics. There's some that quote it in the 80s, 90%.
Wow.
But less than, so if we look at kind of businesses as a whole, less than 5% on average is spent on mitigating human risk. So it does tend to be a compliance exercise. People think that they can make people sit through the training because they have to for a regulatory goal. And then after they do that, that mitigates the risk. And the truth is it doesn't. You know, studies show that just having awareness doesn't change behavior. If you think about health as an example, we all know what we need to do in order to be healthy. You know, we need to, you know, eat a certain way and get lots of movement, but that doesn't stop us from going down the pub every weekend and drinking 15 pints or whatever it is. Because just
that did not come up on my social media. I'm just putting that out there now.
Looking at you. Yeah,
Might
because just having the information doesn't change our behavior.
Jim, do come back in.
Isn't one of the problems, Zoe, as well, the fact that now with the Ombudsman and the regulator trying to be so encouraging of being transparent, sharing passwords within companies, so there's that accessibility at the cost, unfortunately, financially, through the very fact of phishing and accessibility to hacking being more prone because of the transparency now?
I mean, this is, as I said at the start, this is why I'm keen to learn more, because it's not an area I know about. So could you just explain what changes have kind of come in there and how it's affected things?
Yeah. For instance, if you were working in a housing association and say somebody had a password,
right,
you know, they've been told the computer, a particular piece of the software, they will only need to know, only show so much of it. So that could preclude the following on of a complaint, let's say, for just as an example, it follows the complaint, follows from the beginning of the complaint to the end of it. But if in the middle part, somebody has information that should be passed through and they're on the holidays and they've only got their password into their system, then the others cannot interact with that and find out where the complaint is going, where it should be moving to. Just as an example.
Yeah, so you're saying the access to data has been limited to just what people need.
But now they want to be more open, more transparent, and that's leaving it open to the hackers to come and look at systems.
Yeah, but there's also then on the flip side of that, Jim, there's a big need to have that data share as long as it's done the right way, because otherwise you have problems of complaints not being followed through, etc.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'd say so. Yes, there's a kind of GDPR principle which says we should limit data to only what people need to see, but then there's also this kind of tension of needing to. I mean, I used to work in healthcare. Like, we need to be able to see patient records to be able to give someone the correct level of care. I think the important thing is the traceability. So being able to know who's accessed that and for what reason, and anything that looks suspect gets flagged. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. It's where you share the information to what cost it costs, what you're willing to give away and what you're willing to accept. That's bound to happen, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's all really.
Like I said, I think what's clear is, like you said, that cybersecurity is fairly inevitable. Claire, I'm going to bring you in at the point from Kirsty, and then I'm going to go to Zoe to wrap up. So Claire, over to you.
I just want to say that highlights an issue that I see everywhere, that people seem to swing from one extreme to the other and kind of go, we lock down everything or we make everything open. I'm sure you see that all the time. And there are a lot of myths and misunderstanding about what GDPR is actually all about. And you see that all the time, James, that and everyone, that it's there's a lack of understanding. And if something doesn't make sense, if you feel, well, we're following this rule that's come from the regulator and it doesn't feel right, it doesn't sit right,
Yeah.
it's probably been misinterpreted. So I
Yeah.
would say take a step back, speak to somebody
Hmm.
with an outside view and look at it again. Would be
Really true. Really true.
Yeah, as I say, it wasn't my opinion. This is what I've heard through the different webinars where people have come through
Yeah.
and said, by being transparent, what happens to this, the ombudsman
Yeah, but
regulator.
there's a lot
I'm
of-
just, you know, what they have said.
there's a lot of misinformation. I'm sure you see the same, Zoe.
Of course.
Yeah. And you make such a good point. We tend to go from one extreme to the other, and where it's about doing what makes sense for your organization, for the work you're trying to get done, but in the understanding the risks and doing it in as safe a way as possible.
And there's a point there actually from Kirsty, who works at the Housing Ombudsman, say we encourage all
Great.
resident information to be held securely on a case management system, not in individual email accounts, so it can be accessible when required. And yeah, there's more points we can raise around those. But we are moving into the last kind of couple of minutes, Zoe. So I always like to, I guess, ask any of our speakers, what are your, I guess, key things that you'd like to see people take away from? What are the one or two things that businesses probably need to get started with now to really start making a change? Because at the end of the day, as you say, it is inevitable that people are going to get a cyber attack. We can't just kind of sit there and go, it isn't going to happen to me.
Yeah, great question. I think the biggest thing certainly for organizations is make sure your people are working with you, not against you. Make sure if you're putting security controlled processes in place, you're explaining to them why it's important and you're making it as user friendly as possible, because we all know it's human nature. If a control gets put in place that disrupts the way you work, you will find a way to circumvent it. So I mean, it's the title of this session, people-centered security. Make sure you're thinking about the people, because they are, you know, your greatest asset and the thing that is ultimately going to protect you against cybercrime.
Thank you very, very much indeed. Well, I know you've mentioned it a couple of times. The best way to get in touch with you, obviously, you've shared your email, but LinkedIn and it's
LinkedIn, email. It was on the first slide in there, but I can also put it in the chat if anyone wants.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you very, very much, Zoe. Thank you to everyone who contributed today. To those who are new to the roundtable, as I say, we do these every Tuesday, 11 till 12. Next week, we have Devonshire's solicitors coming on to talking about lessons learned from mergers. So a very different very different kind of topic, but one that's obviously going to be very busy and interesting to attend. In the following week after that, the CIH are doing a sponsored one on the recent government proposals for planning reforms, the consultation coming there. But for now, a massive thank you to Zoe. Thank you for today. Thank you for all of your insight and guidance. Thank you for being, tactical with what you were able to share about me. So I appreciate that. I just wish you all the very best. And obviously, if anybody wants to reach out to Zoe, do let me know. I'm more than happily, with authorization, share your email as well.
Oh, go for it. Yeah, anyone's welcome. Anyone's welcome.
Thank you, everybody,
Thanks
for attending.
so much.
And thank you, Zoe. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for that.